homage to our fundamental teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, the wisdom warrior, homage to all the benevolent lineage masters. The Dharma, infinitely profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in millions of eons. Now we are able to hear, study, and follow it. May we fully realize the Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings, please generate supreme bodhicitta. Now we continue teaching the words of my perfect teacher. We are teaching the principle of cause and effect, meaning that everything is the nature of karma. We have already introduced this before. We must never think that we can disregard even the tiniest negative action. Although a negative action may be very small, when it ripens, the consequences are quite severe. As a person with wisdom, one should use wisdom to guide oneself and observe oneself. We must never create negative karma. If we do create negative karma, no one else in this world can bear it. We ourselves must bear it. Next, we explain that similarly, even the most insignificant positive action can produce remarkably great results. So we should not think that just a tiny bit is of no use and dismiss it with disdain. That is to say, when we perform positive actions, we must never think that such a small positive action. For example, when we use prayer wheels daily, use prayer beads, or recite scriptures or offer a single lamp, offer a bouquet of fresh flowers, prostrate once, or circumambulate stupas and Buddha statues once. Such positive actions appear very small on the surface, but actually performing such extremely small merits produces very vast results. Therefore, the maturation rate of both positive and negative actions is quite high. Therefore, those who do not understand the laws of cause and effect, in this world there truly exists this principle that good brings good results, evil brings evil results, or good brings happy results, evil brings painful results. If anyone does not understand such principles on the surface, they may appear to be so talented and wealthy, but actually this can also be considered ignorant behavior. Why? Because such laws truly exist in this world. No one can erase or overturn these laws. Therefore, those of us who have not studied Buddhist principles should also seek to understand the contents of the Buddhist scriptures through various means. This way, it will bring tremendous benefit for both this life and future lives. So here we also tell the story of King Mandhatri as a simple example. In his past life, when he was a poor man, one day he held a handful of peas in his hand, preparing to throw them at a bride. Originally, there was such a custom, such a tradition in that place. Generally, when others held wedding celebrations, people would take a handful of peas and scatter them on her. On the way, he happened to encounter Buddha Kshantisarana. Some sutras say this was Buddha Pushya. The Tathagata was going to the city to collect alms. At that time he generated tremendous faith and scattered the handful of peas toward the Buddha. 4 of the peas fell into the Buddha's alms bowl. 2 peas touched the Buddha's chest. As a result of this karma, he was reborn as a universal monarch of Jambudvipa with such results. On one hand, he encountered an excellent object of merit. Through such excellent circumstances, he later became a universal monarch, life after life. As a result of the 4 peas that fell into the Buddha's alms bowl at that time, he ended up ruling the 4 continents for 80,000 years. The 2 peas that touched the Buddha's chest, as a result of this karma, the result of 1 pea was becoming the chief among the 4 great kings for 80,000 years. The result of the other pea was ruling equally with Indra in the 37th dynasty of the Heaven of 33, sitting as equals with the king of gods and governing the realm. So at that time, his such virtuous deed in the world, he became both a universal monarch and enjoyed the pleasures of a heavenly king. Actually, this king's story, King Mandhatri, is also called King Mandhatri. The story of King Mandhatri also appears in other scriptures. For example, in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, Dirghagama Sutra, Madhyama Agama, as well as the Sutra of the Great Conflagration and the Sutra on the causes and conditions of King Mandhatri, etc. These scriptures all have different accounts. Among them, the story I just told, I remember, is told in the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, which is basically the same as the previous story. At that time, it also tells of a Brahmin's son who was celebrating a wedding and wanted to scatter peas at the bride. At that time, he happened to encounter Buddha Pushya. he generated incomparable joy and then scattered them toward him. As a result, 4 peas went into his alms bowl. 1 pea, it seems, touched his crown. Because of offering the 4 peas, he later ruled the 4 continents. And because 1 pea touched the Tathagata's crown at that time for this reason, later in the heavenly realms he enjoyed heavenly pleasures in the heaven of 33 and the heaven of the 4 great kings. I think I remember it being told that way in there, which is slightly different from what's told in the sutra on the causes and conditions of King Mandhatri. At that time there was a merchant's son, which is what it says here. The sutra I just mentioned says Brahmin's son, but that could also work. Perhaps this Brahmin was from a merchant family. Maybe we could say that. The merchant's son at that time encountered Buddha Vipas on the street. Buddha Vipas happened to be entering the city. Then he made offerings to him, scattering peas. The process is quite similar. 4 of the peas went into his alms bowl. 1 pea touched his alms bowl, made a sound, and fell to the ground. The other peas did not touch the alms bowl and fell directly to the ground. The results of the first 4 peas were the same. As for the last pea, because it made a sound, because it did not fall into the alms bowl, he did not become a heavenly king in the heavenly realms. He did not become a king above the heaven of 33 and the 4 great kings. At that time he also did not achieve that, but regardless, at that time this merchant's son offered the peas to the Tathagata. After offering to the Tathagata, he also generated great joy. He made an aspiration, saying, "Through this vast cause of generosity, may I attain the Buddha's natural wisdom in this world. May I swiftly cross the stream of birth and death and liberate all those the previous Buddhas have not yet liberated." He made this aspiration in the form of a verse, meaning, "Through this vast cause of generosity or offering, may I attain the Tathagata's natural wisdom. May I quickly transcend the great wheel of samsaric birth and death, and in this world, those whom the previous Buddhas could not liberate, those whom the previous Buddhas could not comfort or protect through my power, through my wisdom, may they quickly be liberated and attain freedom." Because he made such an aspiration at that time later, he also quickly attained liberation. King Mandhatri was actually our great teacher Buddha Shakyamuni in a previous life during his time on the path, one of his incarnations. So in this story we must definitely think that ordinarily, as a layperson or as a monastic, when we have some small amount of money or few possessions at such times, when we encounter the Sangha, encounter monasteries, as well as true great masters and practitioners, at such times we should not have a miserly mind. We should begin making offerings with joy, respect, and a mind of generosity. Such a single modest offering produces quite great results. One of King Ashoka's princesses was born with a gold coin in her hand. When she opened it at age 5, it turned out to be inexhaustible. So what was her previous life? Her previous life was actually a servant girl who worked in King Ashoka's palace. Because this servant girl, every time she saw King Ashoka making offerings above and giving below vast positive actions, she would rejoice in her heart. Later she thought, "I did not create positive actions in previous lives. And in this life, I also have no resources for making offerings." Later, she finally obtained a copper coin. Then she offered this copper coin to the Sangha and made dedications. Through this merit, she immediately became a princess in her next life, and her wealth was inexhaustible. So in this world, we truly need to have a kind of joyful heart. We must never belittle the positive actions others perform. Those who don't understand cause and effect, who don't understand merit. Consider the virtuous actions others perform to be foolish behavior. Some time ago, when I was giving teachings to some students in universities, when I was giving them teachings, I explained this issue to them in great detail, because now in many higher universities there is no education about positive and negative cause and effect. When people have not received such education, they always consider what they haven't discovered to be non-existent, or they consider such explanations to be unreasonable. Actually, such thinking is purely wrong view. We should try every possible way to overturn such wrong views. Otherwise, they bring harm and unease to both self and others. Therefore, many of you here because from childhood you have received different kinds of atheistic and materialistic education, as well as education from different religions and different social perspectives. Such education has had certain negative influences throughout your life, which is truly bad, especially the theory that denies cause and effect. The theory that denies cause and effect can be said to be blooming everywhere in today's world, entering every person's heart. The behaviors that arise from such wrong views are distorted and contrary to the Dharma. So all of you should frequently maintain the view of positive and negative cause and effect, which is truly the most important link in Buddhist right view. You must first understand through various means how the Buddhist view of cause and effect is established and how it is proven. You must use your own careful wisdom along with the teachings of past great masters, as well as historically famous sutras and treatises to conduct research. After that, you will truly realize that in this world there exists a very profound and mysterious view of cause and effect that we have not discovered or understood at all. People must never violate this view of cause and effect. Once you violate it, whether you are male or female, young or old, noble or lowly, none can transcend these norms. No one can escape the net of cause and effect. Therefore, the Buddha has continuously emphasized this in relevant sutras. The reason for the importance of deeply believing in cause and effect is also here. So here we have already explained that performing even a tiny positive action has such vast merit. Furthermore, the sutras also mention that visualizing the Buddha and even throwing a single flower into the air as an offering brings such good results that attaining the position of Indra or universal monarch is difficult to reach its limits. Sometimes we visualize the Buddha, sometimes we see Buddha statues. At such times, we generate joy. If you have abundant gold, silver, and precious offerings, that goes without saying, even with a joyful heart. If you scatter one flower or a handful of flowers into the air as an offering before the Buddha, or make offerings before the Buddha statues you see in monasteries, then this merit is truly such that throughout your lifetimes you will attain the results of heavenly kingship or human imperial results. Even the results of universal monarchy cannot encompass it. So some people think that nowadays, for example, a country's president or chairman or some major leaders of the United Nations have especially great merit, but this is not necessarily especially great merit. Perhaps in their previous lives they performed quite modest merit because of their aspiration power and excellent objects of merit at that time, and the convergence of various circumstances now they have the opportunity to enjoy human or heavenly kingship. So we also frequently emphasize to everyone that in daily life you should have this kind of habit. When you get up in the morning, you should make offerings to the Buddha and prostrate. And ordinarily, whether we go to monasteries or see Buddha statues outside, at such times we should begin making offerings, or even when you are riding in a vehicle or walking, visualize the Tathagata and Guru deities in the space before you and make mental illusory offerings before them, flowers or many beautiful offerings of mountains, rivers and earth. Even when you arrive at a particularly beautiful place with flowers, forests, clear springs and so forth, at such times you say with your mouth, I offer to the 3 jewels. And actually in your heart you think of offering all these items completely to the Guru and 3 jewels. If you have such a mind, then this merit is truly limitless. I remember this should be explained in the Sutra of the Great Assembly. If one truly generates faith, this can destroy the 3 lower realms. Offering 1 incense or flower to the Tathagata brings supreme bliss for countless lives. This means if we generate true faith toward the Guru and 3 jewels. If we generate such true faith, through the power of this faith we can overthrow falling into the 3 lower realms of hell, hungry ghosts and animals. This explains the merit of faith. If we visualize the Tathagata or before images of the Tathagata, offer 1 stick of incense, 1 flower, etc., extremely insignificant offerings, then for countless eons we enjoy the supreme bliss of the heavenly realms. Now some people think that certain people in big cities are very wealthy. They have villas, cars and various kinds of wealth and enjoyments, all inexhaustible and endless. Actually, this doesn't require accumulating much real merit. Perhaps in their previous lives they offered flowers and incense before Buddha. Statues such particularly subtle merit can accomplish this. Therefore, When we ordinarily make offerings in monasteries and make offerings before Buddha statues, now some intellectuals feel this is superfluous, thinking this is something for elderly people or their kind of not particularly rational behavior. They have this view. Actually, they have no idea they are creating negative karma. They fundamentally don't understand Buddhist truth. So we should understand that whatever virtuous actions we do in the future, we must never belittle them. When others perform virtuous actions, even if you just recite some mantras, I see some Dharma friends here wherever they go, their prayer beads never leave their bodies. And every time they talk with others or do things, they put markers on their prayer beads, because when you recite to the middle, you put a marker there. After finishing this matter, they pick up the prayer beads again and continue reciting. The same applies to prayer wheels. Actually, such habits in our Tibetan Buddhism are indeed maintained very well and preserved quite excellently. In some other places, occasionally, some Buddhists and practitioners begin to recite occasionally. But except for Dharma assemblies and attending teachings, regular recitation and regular virtuous actions are extremely lacking. This is something we can discover when we frequently interact and associate with some Buddhists in cities. Although they have time and opportunity, they simply don't have this habit. Except for truly attending teachings and Dharma assemblies in monasteries, some people don't have this custom of regular virtue practice in their daily lives. We should try to change this in the future. Practicing virtue can be done anytime and anywhere. You don't necessarily have to meditate. You can only practice virtue when meditating. Other than that, it cannot be like this. We should be able to turn our minds toward virtue anywhere. In the process of doing anything, our minds can also turn toward virtuous actions, and your actions can also do some virtuous deeds to varying degrees. Therefore, here it is also explained, for example in the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish. Do not think virtuous acts are small and without benefit, thus belittling them. When water drops accumulate, they gradually fill a great vessel. Never think that doing a little bit of virtue has no benefit and belittle it. Just like water drops, if slowly, drop by drop they accumulate, then even a particularly large pot, a particularly large vessel can become full. Similar to this scriptural citation, the Udana Varga also contains, "Do not belittle small virtues, thinking they have no merit. Though water drops are tiny, they gradually fill a great vessel. Do not think virtuous actions have no meaning and belittle them thinking they have no merit." The analogy is the same as before. When water drops gradually accumulate, eventually even a large vessel will be filled. The large vessel will be filled completely. So we practitioners should start from small aspects, from small positive actions. Now some people very much want to achieve accomplishment in a very short time. They have such thoughts, but such thoughts, of course, your ideals are very beautiful. Such aspirations are worthy of praise, but the path is still quite complex. Just like a person who hasn't even graduated elementary school, who very much wants to immediately obtain a doctoral degree or postdoctoral qualification. If someone understands education, the entire academic process, they would think, unless you are particularly talented and wise and can transcend all the intermediate universities and high schools completely through sudden advancement, we cannot exclude such people. There should be some. Some are naturally gifted. Some geniuses definitely have such innate wisdom. But can everyone be like this? There are probably certain difficulties, so we should start from bit by bit, from very small aspects. This way, in the future, practicing virtue will not deviate from its proper course. Rigdzin Jigme Lingpa also explains this way in the Treasury of Precious Qualities. The worry-free tree's seed is like a mustard seed, yet when its fruit ripens each year, each branch also grows by 1 yojana. The increase of good and evil results is beyond comparison. Here it explains that originally there is a tree called the worry-free tree. Its seeds are very, very small, smaller than mustard seeds. But in the process of this tree's growth, each year its branches grow by about 1 yojana. It becomes particularly tall, doubling in growth each year. Even so, it cannot describe the growth process of good and evil karmic results. Everyone should know this. You see, what were the results of offering 7 peas? 7 peas. No, not 7. How many? 6, right? What does 4 plus 2 equal? 6, right? Is that correct? Does 4 plus 2 really equal 6? Is it universal? Not universal. How is it not universal? If 4 plus 2 equals 6, does 4 plus 2 equal 6? Yes, you don't dare say either yes or no, right? Yes, is it definite? In the conventional world, it would be definite. If in the conventional world 4 plus 2 equals 6, then does 4 plus minus 2 equal 6? You didn't mention positive and negative just now. You said in the conventional world, is minus 2 conventional or not? Think carefully. So truly, the laws of positive and negative cause and effect in general, even the worry-free tree just mentioned, cannot be compared to them. Sometimes when you think about the principles of cause and effect, the merit of doing virtuous deeds is so great, and the results of negative actions even generating anger for one moment or killing one life, the results mean suffering in the lower realms for many lifetimes. So after thinking about these principles, those who understand cause and effect often have a sense of fear in their hearts. They must never create negative karma. If they create negative karma, this is an extremely frightening thing. They will feel such principles, so we can often explain it this way. Those who understand virtue often like to do virtuous deeds. Those who don't understand good and evil are indifferent. In their view, it doesn't matter. When it doesn't matter, eventually it creates great future troubles, bringing infinite suffering to oneself. Next it says that, conversely, even violating subtle precepts can lead to infinite faults. The virtuous actions we perform have such great results. If we don't do well with some, not mention major ones, very subtle precepts, or even create them with a contemptuous mind, then these results are also quite frightening. The Vinaya also frequently explains this way. In the process of creating negative karma, if we have a sense of shame and regret, feeling that we are particularly pitiful creating negative karma with such feelings, the results are not very severe. But if it's with an indifferent, contemptuous attitude, with an unrestrained mentality, then these results are also quite severe. Next, we tell the story of the Naga king Elapatra from the past. It's also in the Mula Sarvastivada, Vinaya Miscellaneous Matters. It's also in the Chinese Vinaya Miscellaneous Matters. This story is also found in the collection of practices which enable one, endowed with merits. So we should know that Patrul Rinpoche, in the stories and examples he gives here, most come from Buddhist sutras and recognized treatises. So when some people first begin studying the words of my perfect teacher, especially some Han Buddhist practitioners think, oh, the words of my perfect teacher is a tantric teaching. I won't study tantra, my teacher also opposes it. I better study proper, orthodox Chan or Pure Land. If it's really tantric, I don't dare approach it. Actually, it's just that they don't understand the principles. There's no need to be afraid. What you should fear is creating negative karma. Being cautious about that is worthwhile. Your teacher, too, surely would prefer you not to engage with creating negative karma, but in our Tibetan Buddhism, there isn't a single treatise that contradicts Han Buddhist sutras and treatises. So even if you encounter Tibetan Buddhism, it's not a high-voltage power line or a bomb, so it won't harm you. Therefore, I think when some of us don't understand cause and effect or Buddhist principles, they pay attention to places that don't need attention and don't pay attention to places that are worthy of attention. Some matters of cause and effect, such as the property of the Sangha or related topics of creating negative karma and slandering others, these are particularly frightening. But some individuals are not afraid of these aspects at all. Instead, they fear Tibetan Buddhism and fear some precious sutras and treatises. I find this somewhat ignorant. So, regarding the sources of each story here this time, I have also introduced some of what I know to everyone, actually those who have truly studied. The words of my perfect teacher from beginning to end realize it doesn't just discuss Tibetan customs and habits. Rather, as Buddhists, these are stories from important sutras that we must understand. Although these stories exist in the Tripitaka, the key point is that many people haven't applied these stories to actual life or come to understand them. In our brief human life, if we had to read through the entire Tripitaka to know everything thoroughly would be quite difficult. Therefore, now relying on the Guru's pith instructions to help us understand these most crucial and important principles is also very necessary. This story is about the Naga king Elapatra. At that time, this story should have taken place in Sarnath, India. Sarnath in India is also called the place where sages fell. There is this explanation. Why is it called the place where sages fell? Once 500 sages were flying in the sky using their supernatural powers. When they saw a beautiful woman on the ground, these 500 sages generated desire. As a result, their meditative stability was harmed and they all fell to the ground. So it's called the place where sages fell. There is also this explanation. Also regarding Sarnath, formerly there was a king who frequently killed deer. Later there was a deer king who, in order to protect the doe and fawn, made a request before the king, and later the king took pity on it. From then on, he issued an order forbidding the killing of deer there. From then on, the entire place became a deer park. Here countless deer lived freely and happily. So when the Buddha turned the Dharma wheel, he also chose this place. There is also this explanation. Both our Tibetan and Chinese terms have these two different explanations. In this city, when the Buddha was teaching the Dharma, at that time, the Naga king Elapatra very much wanted to go there to request the Dharma. But if it went in its own form on one hand, various obstacles might appear on the other hand. It would not be good for it to appear before people because it looked particularly ugly. So it transformed into a universal monarch, bringing many armies, attendants, and the 7 royal treasures adorned with various jewelry, gold and silver ornaments, etc., appearing particularly majestic and arriving grandly before the Buddha. When it came before the Buddha at that time, the Buddha very sternly rebuked it, saying, "You not only destroyed Buddha Kashyapa's teachings in the past, do you also want to come and destroy my teachings? If you reveal your original form and listen to the Dharma, I will permit it. If you don't do this, leave immediately." The Buddha rebuked it this way. When it first arrived, many of the assembly thought, "Today a particularly great king has come. Who is this king? This is truly remarkable." They were all discussing excitedly. The Buddha at that time said, "Let's talk about this later. Don't be anxious now. Wait a while and then you'll know who he is." After the Buddha said this, the Naga king Elapatra said, "I face many threats. Therefore, I truly dare not reveal my original form." Later, the Buddha said, "You'd better reveal your own form. Then I will request Bodhisattva Vajrapani and the great Yakshas to protect you." At this time it began to reveal its original body. It was a giant serpent spanning several yojanas, appearing before the people. On its head, the sutra says it had 7 heads. On each head grew a particularly large tree. There was a particularly large Elapatra tree heavily pressing down on it. At the roots, countless insects were swarming, constantly eating it. This Naga king was experiencing incomparably great suffering. At that time, the Naga king also pleaded with the Buddha to save it, telling it when it could attain liberation. The Buddha said, "Because your past karmic results are quite severe. Only when Buddha Maitreya comes will I give you a prophecy about when you'll attain liberation." During Buddha Shakyamuni's time, there was no way to tell. Only when human lifespan reaches 80,000 years can it be told. Later, Ananda and other disciples asked the world-honored one, why was it reborn as such a terrifying Naga king? The world-honored one said, in the past when human lifespan was 20,000 years. In Buddha Kashyapa's teachings, there was a monk who once, while traveling, because he had been practicing in the mountains for many years, when practicing, his mind was quite peaceful, and he didn't want to interact with many people. Once he went to the city to collect alms. That day, he seemed not to have obtained food and was not in a good mood. Just then, an Elapatra tree caught his robes. The explanations are somewhat different. Some say it was because he was meditating. At that time he also hadn't obtained food, and when he returned and continued meditating, leaves from Elapatra tree in front of him fell down. At this time, since he was already in a bad mood, he immediately picked the leaves and threw them on the ground. There is also this explanation. Regardless, he was very angry at that time. He first picked the leaves, and some people told him not to do this. You are after all a monk, a renunciant. Monastics cannot easily destroy plants. At this time he also slandered the Tathagata, saying the Tathagata can establish precepts for sentient beings. But not being allowed to destroy non-sentient phenomena makes no sense. Through such slanderous words, later these results matured. Such negative karma gradually formed. At that time, the Buddha explained the entire experience and process and told all the disciples, even after countless eons, that karma cannot be destroyed. When the results ripen, beings will definitely experience them. After countless eons, the karma created by beings will not be destroyed. It will not be exhausted in between. Once its results ripen, no matter what kind of being, they will definitely experience it. Actually, we truly need to contemplate the content of these verses again and again. For all of you here, theoretically, there's nothing particularly profound. You see, each verse, each principle can be completely understood, you understand, upon hearing. But have we contemplated their profound principles? Every day we should contemplate the infallibility of cause and effect. Contemplating the infallibility of cause and effect, is this just a legend or mythical story? Absolutely not. This will vividly appear in our daily lives. It has appeared in countless people's lives before. In the future, each of us will also rely on the laws of good and evil, karmic retribution to enjoy our future. We can also say our future destiny is all within such cycles of cause and effect, beginning to live this kind of life. So once we truly violate the Buddha's teachings or certain precepts, there will be no good results. But ignorant people will absolutely not reflect or understand. It seems the compendium of the essentials of Dharma also explains, those who violate the Buddha's words are ignorant people. In countless sufferings for long periods, they have no liberation. Those who truly violate the Buddha's teachings are definitely ignorant people. Either they know nothing about worldly matters, or they may have no understanding of transcendental matters. For this reason, they slander or belittle the laws of cause and effect. Such people, whether you acknowledge it or not, will experience the results in the future. Now we are studying the Dharma. I especially hope for those present here, monastic and lay Dharma friends, and those who through DVDs through the internet now have various convenient methods to receive Buddhist principles. I especially hope they all develop a firm and indestructible right view regarding cause and effect feeling from the depths of their hearts, that wherever they go, whatever kind of happiness or suffering appears, or whatever kind of environment or circumstances they're in, they have a conscious restraint. I must never create negative karma. If I create negative karma, my future will not be happy. We clearly know that every person hopes for happiness and wants to avoid suffering, except for some true bodhisattvas who are bodhisattvas working to liberate and benefit beings. Among ordinary beings, I think there's no one who willingly wants suffering. Ordinarily, when we talk big, we can do it, but when it involves your own. For example, when your body becomes ill, when you're sick, generally speaking, most people think, I hope my body recovers quickly, taking Chinese medicine, Tibetan medicine, Western medicine, any medicine they want to take. Many people, we often say, may all the suffering of sentient beings be accepted into my body. If it benefits beings, may I become ill. If it benefits beings, may I die. If it benefits beings, may I quickly obtain all kinds of suffering. When we study the 7 points of training the mind, we speak this way, but truly, once you become ill, will you think of sentient beings? Each of us should have self-awareness. We should know what our own level of realization is. If we don't consider or think about the future at all, this is ignorant behavior. We should think that the principle of the infallibility of cause and effect is very important. So recently everyone has requested to frequently practice the common teachings of the words of my perfect teacher. What we call practice is like this: whether alone or among others, slowly contemplate whether cause and effect is truly like this. If you feel that positive and negative cause and effect is not this way, then you can debate this before others. You can refuse to acknowledge it. Speech is also free, your beliefs are also free, but countless wise ones cannot transcend this truth. So I think ordinary people like us probably cannot argue against it. We have no reasons. Therefore we must definitely think about these principles of cause and effect. Here it also explains that among all positive and negative actions, whether they are black or white, light or heavy, the key is to look at a person's motivation. If we see that this person's mind is evil, then it becomes negative karma. If the mind is virtuous, then even though on the surface it may not seem virtuous, actually it becomes virtuous. To give an example to illustrate, if a great tree's root has medicinal properties, then its trunk, leaves, branches, etc. are definitely medicine. If its root is poisonous, then the leaves and trunk are necessarily toxic, so a root full of poison can never produce leaves and flowers that are miraculous medicine. Similarly, if you act with motivations of greed and anger, with ill intentions and impure aspirations, even if on the surface you do very virtuous deeds and create positive actions, actually they become non-virtuous actions. If our inner mind is pure and spotless, then even though on the surface, outwardly, it appears as if we're creating negative karma, actually it has become a virtuous deed. So whether we ordinarily create positive or negative karma depends on observing this mind of ours, whether your mind has greed and anger. Just as Nagarjuna explains in The Precious Garland, actions performed without greed and anger are virtuous actions. If you create with greed, anger, and ignorance in your mind, then no matter how good it appears on the surface, actually you're creating negative karma. Therefore, the Treasury of Precious Qualities also states, if the tree root is medicine, the sprout is also medicine. If the root is poison, what's the use of mentioning the sprout? It follows only the difference between virtuous and evil intentions, not the size of virtuous and evil appearances. Cause and effect is created according to the difference between our virtuous and evil intentions. It's not determined by the big things you do externally on the surface. The difference between tree roots and leaves, I remember there's also an analogy in the Udanavarga. In the past in Shravasti, there was a particularly beautiful garden, like a botanical garden. Inside was a great tree with dense branches and leaves. Many guests came underneath to enjoy the shade and rest, but anyone who rested there after a while would get headaches or backaches, frequently experiencing different degrees of such suffering. Later the gardener wondered what the reason was. He couldn't figure it out. Later, he cut down all its leaves and branches. After some time they began growing again, and the new leaves were even better than before. Under that tree, many people also came, attracting many people who frequently rested under the tree. But those who frequently rested there also frequently experienced this suffering, and there were even some cases of death. Later, he kept thinking about what method could be used for this tree, so that in the future it wouldn't cause others to suffer. He kept considering this. A wise person told him, if you truly want to help others, 4 words, completely remove its root. You must completely cut off its root. Then he fundamentally cut off its root. From then on, this tree never grew again. Since it never grew again, it also brought no suffering to people. This shows that if its root is poisonous, no matter how you cut the branches and leaves, it cannot be eradicated. The same principle applies. If our mind is evil, no matter how well you pretend in behavior and on the surface, actually it's all a kind of evil cycle. There cannot be virtuous results. Therefore, through this analogy and the scriptural citation just mentioned, we should know that when doing anything in the future first, as the past great masters taught, observe your own mind to see if it has worldly afflictions of greed, anger, and ignorance. If you act under the influence of afflictions, the results will definitely not be good. If we use a pure mind and joyful mind, without selfish mind and with altruistic mind, if we act with such mental states on the surface, you might be doing your own affairs or not, very dharmic things, but actually the merit is limitless. Below, this also explains, therefore, for bodhisattvas who have not the slightest selfishness and whose minds are infinitely pure, there are times when the 7 non-virtuous actions of body and speech are directly or indirectly permitted. Just like when the compassionate ship captain killed the black spearman, and when the Brahmin's son had improper relations with the Brahmin woman, cases like these 2 stories are explained below. So this mind of ours, in creating karma or in the principles of cause and effect, the mind occupies an important position. If the mind is virtuous, then everything is virtuous. If the mind is evil, then everything is evil. The reason lies here. Now let's briefly explain these 2 stories. First, let's explain the story of the compassionate ship captain. In the Chinese Sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels, Mahayana, Skillful Means section, it's explained quite clearly. This is also clearly explained in the exoteric teachings, and also in the Sutra on the questions by Jnanotara Bodhisattva on the means for great good. In that sutra, these two stories are also explained clearly. Therefore, it's not in tantric scriptures that are close to the secret teachings that such permissions for killing and sexual misconduct, these rather special stories, can be explained. In the past, when our great teacher Buddha Shakyamuni was reborn as the compassionate ship captain at that time, it should have been when Buddha Dipankara was in the world. At that time there were 500 merchants who went together to the ocean to seek treasures. On the way there was one called the Black Spearman. Actually, black man means evil person. As for short spear, it seems the compassionate ship captain killed him by piercing his body with a spear. Perhaps the name was derived from this. The Black Spearman was actually a cruel and ruthless, very evil bandit. This bandit disguised himself as a merchant and infiltrated among the 500 merchants. At that time, it seems the compassionate ship captain, as explained in the sutra, had a dream in which a sea goddess told him that the Black Spearman was preparing to kill 500 bodhisattvas. If he killed them, his negative karma would be extremely severe. You must find a way. Later, this compassionate ship captain thought, these 500 merchants are all non-retreating bodhisattvas. If this one person kills them, then the consequence will inevitably be falling into hell for countless eons. This is truly pitiful. If I kill this person, I probably have no choice but to definitely fall into hell. Even if I myself fall into hell, I'm willing. After thinking this through, the compassionate ship captain with extraordinary courage resolutely killed that bandit. That is, he killed the Black Spearman and saved all the merchants, and through this act of killing, it did not constitute negative karma, but instead completed 70,000 eons of merit. The author says here that this story on the surface appears to be creating negative karma. Why? Because as a bodhisattva, he personally killed a person, but actually it was completely virtuous action. Why is it virtuous? Because the compassionate ship captain had not even a drop of selfish thought, and from an immediate perspective, he also protected the lives of 500 merchants. From a long-term perspective, he saved the Black Spearman from the suffering of hell, so it was a great virtuous deed, a great virtuous action. This is what we frequently call liberation practice in Tantra. Tantra relies on skillful compassion and special wisdom, this union of wisdom and compassion, the state of wisdom-compassion unity. Then one can kill some beings with heavy negative karma who are mainly destined for lower realms. In the exoteric teachings, there are also permissions for liberation practices, which are the same as in Tantra. Now, some individuals don't understand Tantra at all and even feel that some behaviors in Tantra are not in accordance with Dharma. If it's not Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings, then the exoteric sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels also deserves to be re-examined. This is one story. And there's also the Brahmin lover of the stars. The Brahmin lover of the stars in the sutra of the Great Heap of Jewels is called the Tree Offering Brahmin. He practiced celibacy in the forest for many years. Once when he went to the city of great bliss, to collect alms there, a Brahmin woman developed desire and love for him. Then she requested to marry him, and he continuously refused. After he continuously refused, the Brahmin woman prepared to die. Later, after he walked 7 steps, he thought, if I don't accept her, she will die. If I accept her, I will also break my vows. He truly had no choice and finally decided to marry her. The Brahmin involuntarily generated compassion for her. So he married her and they lived together for 12 years. But later, because of this violation of vows, it did not constitute negative karma. Instead, because he was strongly motivated by great compassion to do this, he completed 40,000 eons of merit. So, in some of our Mahayana scriptures on the surface, it appears to be sexual misconduct or breaking vows. But actually, what Tantra specifically discusses, such as great masters taking Dakini consorts, union practices, etc., these terms actually have representative examples in the exoteric teachings too. We can also say this story can only be explained this way in exoteric teachings. If you don't explain it this way and measure it completely by the individual liberation precepts, it would definitely be difficult. In the Flower Ornament Sutra, there's also someone called Pure Sunlight. She saw Bodhisattva, powerful virtue, Prince, powerful virtue, and developed extreme love for him. Later the Bodhisattva accepted her out of compassion. The sutra also says, though with a mind of passionate love, she made offerings to that Buddha's son. For 250 eons she did not fall into the 3 lower realms. There is this scriptural citation saying, though with a passionate mind she made offerings to the Buddha's son, at that time she was completely motivated by desire, but this desire did not constitute negative karma. Instead, merit for 250 eons was completed, and she did not fall into lower realms. So in the exoteric teachings, we can say there are also some rather special cases. Just as we've explained before, in the Sutra of the Noble Mahayana, when Bodhisattva Nivarana Viskambin went to seek the mantra transmission of Avalokiteshvara, this teacher on the surface appeared to have a wife and children. And even his dharma robes were stained with impure excrement, but the Buddha told him, you must not generate wrong views. And in the Great Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, it discusses Bodhisattva Dharmodgata, whom we call Bodhisattva Dharmodgata. Bodhisattva Dharmodgata at that time lived together with 68,000 serving women. Then Bodhisattva Sadaprarudita requested the Prajnaparamita teachings there and was also told not to generate wrong views. These are all bodhisattvas with householder status, or they practice virtue through Mahayana skillful means. But practicing virtue is absolutely not for us worldly people with particularly strong desire, completely motivated by selfishness, or trapped in emotional entanglements, unable to escape from such mental states. Such behavior is completely destructive to Buddhism. So here, under special circumstances, when some actions of body and speech appear to be negative karma on the surface, but are actually virtuous, there are also times when they are permitted. Such cases of killing and breaking celibacy are permitted, but for those completely motivated by selfish desires and self-interest, acting under the influence of greed, anger, and ignorance, this is never permitted for anyone at any time. Everyone must definitely understand this. Otherwise, if we now use Tantra as an excuse, use practice as an excuse, and completely begin creating negative karma with our own genuine greed and anger, such negative karma will absolutely bring unhappy results. It's impossible for it to have virtuous results, so this point must definitely be noted. Otherwise, we verbally speak of tantric union and liberation practices, but actually completely use worldly hatred to kill beings and use desire to enjoy pleasures with others. In such cases, just as explained in the Buddhist scriptures, virtue and non-virtue are completely determined by the mind when determined by such virtuous and evil minds. The results they experience are also suffering and happiness. I remember in some sutra it explains, and those sentient beings who create virtue and non-virtue will definitely obtain happiness and unhappiness. As sentient beings, if you create virtue or create evil according to the different causes created, the feelings obtained are either happiness or suffering. This is without doubt. So for each of us, we will definitely love ourselves. It's impossible not to care about ourselves at all regarding the future, except for the extremely foolish. Everyone will still be responsible for their own future. If you are responsible, then definitely do not, before you reach the highest level of realization, use various excuses from Tantra to create negative karma. This is unreasonable. If you truly have some level of realization, then that's another matter. So for us here, discernment of cause and effect is quite important. Everyone in the process of studying the words of my perfect teacher must definitely build this foundation well. With this foundation, our study of the Dharma will be stable and continue long term. If you practice the words of my perfect teacher very well, after 10 years, 8 years, 20 years, you will become a true practitioner. If you haven't built the foundation of the words of my perfect teacher, Well, temporarily, for 2 or 3 years, you praise yourself very highly, and others also say, your practice is particularly good. Do you have wings growing and fly happily back and forth in space? Actually, after some time, you'll fall back to your original level. How you were before studying Buddhism is how you'll become. Again, what is the reason for this? Of course, it's also related to some special circumstances from past lives. But most importantly, it's probably the foundation of the words of my perfect teacher. So throughout history, since ancient times, among the disciples of many great masters, those who emphasized the words of my perfect teacher, their practice throughout life will not retreat. They won't generate wrong views, and their practice has a good beginning and end. But those who haven't built a good foundation are like buildings on ice. In such cases, in the near future, when they encounter even slight obstacles immediately, their entire level of practice is completely destroyed. So in this regard, I hope everyone should think carefully. All right, let's stop here. Thank you.
Mandhatri Bana Sodargye Mandhatri Bana Sodargye Mandhatri Bana Sodargye